For everyone that doesn't know me, Rob Hunt, I'm the Program Manager for Sustainable Ag at NQ Dry Tropics. Thank you for coming out today to contribute to this conversation. My presentation is going to be pretty brief. I'm essentially going to give people a quick rundown on, I guess, the parts of the paddock to reef water quality report card that relate specifically to the Burdekin region. We are actually developing a specific summary document for everybody to get a copy of. Unfortunately, it wasn't available in time for today, but the purpose of that is just to, I guess, highlight the Burdekin features, so it saves you having to go into the report card online if you choose not to. So Chanel gave us a pretty good overview of what the Reef Water Quality Report Card is, but I thought I'd just very quickly summarise it and I guess give a little bit of context, because context is really important when you've got a reef-wide report card with a huge amount of data. As Chanel said, takes 18 months to process that data and get it out in the public domain. So as you can imagine, there's some time lag and delay from when data is reported from projects in the field to actually becoming published in a report card. So firstly, it clearly, the report card reports on a broad variety of targets: reef and wetland condition, water quality, catchment management and land management targets. And it's viewable at individual, regional and whole of reef catchment context. A report card for 2020-2021 actually contains data that was reported about 18 months prior, and that means those projects may have started another 3 years before that. So if you imagine projects that have just finished under the GBRF Foundation investment, those projects started 3 and 4 years ago. So it's quite a time lag between when things start happening on the ground and when they appear in a report card. And I think that's really important to understand. So in other words, the report card you're seeing for 2021 reflects work that started well before that. It's also important to note that whilst they're annual report cards, investments don't come annually. They come in phases, usually 3 or 4 years. And quite often, all the reporting on an investment happens in the last year of that investment phase. And therefore, you don't get a nice, smooth sort of delivery of outcomes to the report cards. They come in blocks. So it's quite important to note that. So a very quick rundown on the 3 main areas of interest. Sediment first. And as Chanel said, there was some really good results in ground cover, as you would expect when you've had a run of good seasons, so that's promising, but it also is a result of some really good work that's happening out in the grazing space. You've got a lot of landholders who are have been improving practices, which is also helping to improve ground cover and biomass in our grazing areas. And that snapshot, which is actually from our draft regional report card summary, highlights just some of the good work that's been done by landholders around the whole of the Burdekin region. There's been an enormous amount of work. Unfortunately, the report card gives us some not so attractive numbers and figures. So despite all that good work, we're getting an E. But in actual fact, we've delivered 611 kilotons of an 895 kiloton target. So we're 68% of the way to the target. So the E doesn't give the E is really just that 1 year grab of where we are against the curve. So I'm suggesting don't worry yourself about those numbers. What you should be focusing on is the fact that we're 68% of the way there and we've got 3 more years yet. So we might not get there, but we're doing pretty well. And I would argue the industry is doing pretty damn well because it's a huge region. There's a huge amount of work to be done and it takes time. Things don't change overnight. So in actual fact, whilst 2022, the report card didn't show a huge jump in outcomes, it didn't fall within the period where you would expect a lot of reporting to have come through. So I would anticipate a much better result in the following report card. I think this is an indication of where sometimes the report card on a year-to-year basis can give a bit of a false impression of how things are going, and it creates some challenges, I'm sure, out in the community when it probably doesn't need to be that way. Moving on to dissolved inorganic nitrogen, and it's a pretty similar story. There's a huge amount of work being done in the lower Burdekin. by cane farmers, by industry organisations, by research and development organisations. We're all pulling our weight. And the reality is we've actually achieved 440 tonnes of the 740 tonne target. So we're at 60%. That's pretty good. Unfortunately, again, on a year basis, the report card says that. Again, I'm suggesting don't worry about it. What's important is that, and I'm sorry about the difference in the graph, but again, 2022, again, out of sync with an investment phase. Next year or the following year's report will have a significantly different result, and we're actually 60% of the way there, and we've only got the blue yet to be achieved. So again, the industry should be very proud of that effort, and the support organisations who are driving that change and helping the industry deliver that change should be very proud of the effort as well. There's been an enormous amount of effort in the Lower Burdekin in the last 4 years under the Reef Trust Partnership investment, and I'm confident that that number is going to go up significantly in the next report card. And moving on to pesticides. Pesticides are a little bit different because it's measured as opposed to modelled. So I guess it's more, there's a higher degree of confidence in the data. Pesticides based around protecting 99% of aquatic species at the end of the catchment. Monitoring is currently showing Horton's ticking along at about 80% protection. So we've got a bit of work to do there. We all acknowledge that, and we're things are happening. The Burdekin on the south, essentially the south side of the river, 94.6%, which is pretty darn close to the target. So again, we're getting there. There's been some good on-ground projects, which you'll hear about later today, which will emphasise where the hard work's being done by the industry to try and improve those numbers as well. So, the sea grade is actually probably a fair reflection of where we're at, but it's definitely on the uptick. And I think that is my presentation. I guess take-home message from me is, the report card from year to year sometimes can be a little bit difficult to understand. There are some figures in the report card that can be confusing, but ultimately NQ Dry Tropics is trying to publish a locally relevant document that tries to help decipher some of that information. I think generally we've got some pretty challenging targets ahead of us. We've all got to work on that collectively, and the best way to do that is to be really open and clear in our communication. And I think that open communication, and we need to make sure that our report cards don't contain confusing language and confusing numbers that give us, a false impression of what might be going on, or actually get people's backs up, because we all need to be working towards these targets. So having Ds and Es in report cards in isolation can be a very challenging thing that can be upsetting to industry, and I hear it all the time, that people are not happy with the report card, that it doesn't reflect what's going on on the ground. So I guess it's a bit of a take-home message for everybody that, maybe we can improve the language and the science communications a little to try and keep everyone on side. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.